So tonight's playwright, who we're going to talk to a little bit before the show starts, is the amazing, wonderful, excessively intelligent, and bright, sparkly Bennett Fisher. Come on in. I'm making it. So, Mr. Fisher.
Yes.
As a writer, you've written a lot of plays, right?
Yeah. Yes. A lot of it's been mostly. I had my first full-length play fully produced in March, but I've written about, I think, 6 full-lengths and 26 short plays. So
Great.
yeah, it's a lot.
Great. And what do you like to write about? What are themes you?
When I started, I started as an actor and then as a director and kind of came to playwriting last. So I wanted to write plays that I felt would be interesting to perform, because I think you get some writers who are, who don't necessarily like actors or want actors to be little robots. And I think the great thing about writing, and actually why I'm so happy to be doing this, is that when you write a play, since it's a collaborative medium, people discover things with the characters, and the director finds things about the script that you don't intend. And that to me is the real draw to writing. Most of my friends are not theater people, so I try to write plays that they'll come and see, which means that I've never written a play, and I hope that I saw my hand on it before I write a play about a struggling playwright in San Francisco. And things like that. So I read the news a lot. My last full-length play was about the Greek financial collapse. I've got one coming up next year, which is sort of inspired by WikiLeaks and Google in China. So I read the news a lot, and I think what I want to do is to stay as current as possible. Not necessarily make the plays, specifically linked to a time and place, but have a sort of, immediate relevance to what's happening, and for people who aren't in the arts, because that should be what the audience is.
So current concerns.
Yeah, current concerns.
Brings us to this play.
Which is about zombies, which is
a current concern.
Right.
I think so.
So this one actually, this is a play that I had an idea for. When I was watching Hurricane Katrina happen my sophomore year or junior year of college, and I was back east, about to go to school and just watching the reports, and I was so just sort of horrified by the government's apathy towards these people. But I also realized that I need to write a play about New Orleans, and I was like, I've never been to New Orleans. I would write a terrible play about New Orleans. So I thought I wanted to write a play about people recovering from a disaster. I'm a huge fan of zombie movies, but I think what's interesting in zombie movies is they never show the moment where all the zombies are gone, maybe they're gone, and the society starts to rebuild. And I just was struck as Katrina kept unfolding, and we learned about people repopulating New Orleans. What must it be like to go back to your life when you don't trust the government anymore, when everything you know is gone? And I think zombies are kind of a cool entry point into that, because we all have our zombie survivalist strategies. Like, I'm going to go to Coit Tower, I'm going to get a ton of guns, whatever. Maybe you don't, but I do. But nobody has the idea of, when the zombies are all gone, what am I going to do for a job? Will my house still be there? Do I trust the military or the government anymore after this? So that's kind of was my hook. And I had this premise, and I didn't know what to do with it. And then when I heard about this from you, I was like, oh, this is great. They'll just write the play for me. So I banged out a scene and as rapidly as I could, and I'm just interested to see where it goes.
Great, cool. What would you say? Let's turn to the actors for a second. What do you think they should know about their characters?
Right. Well, I think that a lot of good zombie movies are not about zombies, but are about people. And I think that the most interesting ones involve a group of people coming together who would never have any contact with one another in the normal world. And in this play, we have an engineer, a bank teller, a janitor, and a convicted felon, a former student. So it's, and I think and especially with the way our society is right now, I feel like there's so little contact between classes and between groups. So I think that's something. I don't want to get too specific, but I feel that these people would not be together unless they were forced to be together by circumstance, and maybe are not very compatible with one another, but have learned to be compatible. I also think that there is something about whenever you adjust to a new environment or something unexpected happens, you kind of go into what was interesting to see about Katrina is that people sort of went into bunker mode, and we all got really concerned about, you don't worry about whether you have, I think a lot of people in San Francisco went and bought more water and canned goods and things like that after Katrina, worrying about the earthquake, but you don't think about that until it comes there. And I think that there's also a point where we have a toggle between like fear mode and normal life mode. And this play, I think, occurs at that moment where maybe it's okay for us to stop being afraid, but I don't know if I'm ready for that or if the other characters are ready for that. And I think that with Harker, I really love writers like Pinter and McDonough, where you're not entirely sure whether you can believe what they say. And I think that the fact that we don't know whether Harker is who he says he is it's kind of immaterial who he is really. It's what the character is and what he thinks. So
the style is very modern, real this time. Are there tinges of this sort of existential no exit kind of thing?
Maybe. I mean, I guess that's up to you. I don't want to. I don't want to put. I think I've only written comedies because I think that there's something about, and usually not like. Sometimes they're very, very dark comedies, just like this one. But I think that there's something about laughter where you can, when someone laughs in a play, I think it's because they're recognizing the truth. You're like, oh, okay, that's funny. I know that to be true, so I find it funny. So I think that, I feel this is a funny play. It may not be it, but I think that, I don't want that to happen at the expense of it not being true.
Okay, great. That makes sense.
Yeah.
About the kind of pace of the piece, do you have an idea about, is it fast, slow, in between, the music, the lights?
I think that it's, when you're stuck in a room with a bunch of people, I think that time takes on this elastic quality. And I just spent, 12 hours getting from upstate New York back here yesterday. And I found that, even though I was just sitting in the airport, there was so much activity, even though I was doing nothing. So I feel like that's the sense of time for me in this play. That it's like being in the airport. It's like waiting for the doctor, or even in a disaster and staying, under in the basement while the hurricane's raging outside. So you have kind of all the time in the world, but no time in the world at the same time. It's very zen and not very specific.
Actors, do you have any questions that you've come across? They've just had the script for the time you were starting to come in till now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the most interesting work happens as a writer when you go from your gut, not from your mind. When you find something that's, kind of primal and impulsive, and don't try to think through it all. So I guess the only thing I would say to the actors, and I'm sure they know this as improvisers, is just to not. What my idea of what the play is immaterial. The writer's just a cog in the machine of the collaborative process, and I think. The writers I admire are able to, let go of their work and let it be what it is. So I really have no idea what's going to happen. But I think that I'm not going to be like, oh, they got it wrong. So I think that if, whatever you pick up in those first 10 pages is the right thing.
I have one question that's silly. Because I've never been to the Adirondacks.
Yes.
Why the Adirondacks?
Oh.
What is it about it that...
Well, I just came back from the Adirondacks.
Okay, good. That's fine.
That's it. Yeah. That's because it's remote.
Okay.
And because if you were in the Adirondacks waiting for a zombie apocalypse to blow over, you wouldn't know if it had.
Okay.
I mean, if you were in, Cleveland and there were suddenly zombies on the street, you'd be like, well, they're probably gone. But if you're in... but if you're in the middle of nowhere in the woods, I was struck when I was up there, you can go places and there's nothing. There's just forest and forest and forest for miles. So it's because it's, again, like I was saying with Harker, nobody can be absolutely certain of any truth in the play.
News travels
slow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, last thing.
Just one question. What's the season?
Oh.
Good question.
I think, okay, so it must be, given the timeline of the piece and what Harker says, it must be kind of like July. We're pretty much right about now, I guess, like July, August. So the snow is thawed. The military, according to Harker, has come through and cleared out all the zombies in the spring. And now they're in the rebuilding phase. And I think that, but maybe if you want to push it closer to the winter, if it's in November or late September, maybe that's more interesting because then again, the time issue is more sensitive. It's going to start snowing soon. And
Right.
then, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I guess the first person to say, it's July, will like...
I have one question.
Yeah.
So this is a couple of years after the initial attack. Like, how
Right.
long have we been living in this basement together?
I don't know about that. I think that, they probably didn't go straight from wherever they were to here. I imagine all these people are probably from the East. They probably managed to find their way here. I'm sure there are people that they were with that didn't make it. But I would say, my gut is that they've been here for at least 6 months. Long enough to, have become, or 4 months, or become established, or become comfortable with a way of life. And that this is a place where they're like, okay, this is where we're going to sit through. This is not just a stopping point on the way. But yeah, I guess that 6 months to maybe even a year. But again, it's so remote that they wouldn't, you wouldn't really. Time, I think, is irrelevant when you leave your life and you leave your job behind. Like, what's a month to 2 months to 3 months to 5 months? It's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And last thing, could you give us a sense of this? We're in a basement, right?
Right.
The opening.
So I'm struck when I went to school in New England, and I think that you get these buildings that are like super, super old. They've been there since the late 1700s, which you don't have in California. And so this is what I imagine this basement to be like some basement in like a farmhouse or in like an old church or something like that. That's it's just everything about it is gross. It's like dust filled. There's maybe old weird equipment on the walls or like faded books. The electricity that they've set up from the generator is probably a little spotty, and it's a place where you would. I imagine it's like the basement is inspired by my grandmother had this basement she lives in New England. She's dead, so she doesn't live at all. But her house is still there. And the basement for me as a kid was the place that I would never want to go because there was a hurricane one season we were out there, and we all had to go in the basement and. It was weird, being in this place that was supposed to be safe, but where I couldn't feel safe at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's what the basement is. I mean, the important thing, I guess, for the characters is that this is not a home for them; it's a shelter, and I don't think any of them want to be there, but they've had to accept being there because whatever. And I also think there's something about basements. You put things you don't want to deal with in your house, secrets and photos, and it's this kind of this weird ghost story where there's all these things there that can't see the light of day.
Thank you so much. The name of this play is Disinfect, and we're going to start right now. Another hand for Ben.